I just had my second son. He was about 8.5, 9 months when I noticed a lymph node in my neck that was swollen, that to this day we'll never forget. Um, so that was the initial catch. I was feeling fine other than being extremely fatigued. I had, again, like I said, my second son. So I thought, okay, this is what happens when you have your second kid. I have a 2-year-old. This is my second child. I'm probably just so tired. That's normal. That was still considered the normal bucket. But little did I know that little lymph node that was in my neck was the precursor to many, many years of a lifelong journey of cancer and cancer survival.
My mission is to empower women to fearlessly embrace and live their authentic lives. In today's episode, we will talk about cancer, a dreadful topic for all of us, but unfortunately the reality of many. About 80,000 young adults aged 20 to 39 are diagnosed with cancer each year in the United States. About 9,000 young adults die from cancer each year. Cancer is the fourth leading cause of death in this age group. It is a leading cause of death from disease among females and is second only to heart disease among males. Young women are more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than young men. Survivor rates can vary based on the type of cancer and other factors. I actually lost my own father back in November of 2022 due to cancer. After all his chemo, surgery, radiation, he passed away within a year of being diagnosed, but that's a conversation for another episode. Today, we have an amazing mother, friend, and overall exceptional person on our show, Nasim Boggs. Nasim is a mother of 2 boys and currently runs the global clinical trials for heart failure patients with tricuspid and mitral disease. I've known Nasim for over 20 years. We have experienced many of life's ups and downs together. However, I will never forget the day when she called me up screaming that she was diagnosed with cancer. I can still hear her voice and feel the pain in her heart. Nasim is a prime example of how a positive attitude, gratitude for life, as well as having a never give up mentality can do for your health. She's a cancer survivor and a person with such a zest for life and my inspiration. She's always mindful and never takes anything for granted. Hi, Nasim. I'm so thrilled to have you on our show today. Thank you for taking the time.
Honored. I'm so honored. I get tears in my eyes when you introduced me.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, you know I love you, so that's a whole another story. So I'm so excited to have you here, and I know you've had a long journey, and I feel like your story is such an inspirational story for everyone else, and a lot of people can learn from you. So why don't you kind of start telling us how and when you found out you were diagnosed with cancer, what kind of cancer it was, how old were you?
Okay. And just keep me on a time check. Let me know when I'm going over or not enough. I was 34 years old when I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had just had my second son. He was about 8.5, 9 months when I noticed a lymph node in my neck that was swollen, that to this day we'll never forget. So that was the initial catch. I was feeling fine other than being extremely fatigued. I had, again, like I said, my second son. So I thought, okay, this is what happens when you have your second kid. I have a 2-year-old. This is my second child. I'm probably just so tired. That's normal. That was still considered the normal bucket. But little did I know that little lymph node that was in my neck was the precursor to many, many years of a lifelong journey of cancer and cancer survival.
Did you have any other symptoms? Like if you had
nope.
just being tired, fatigue?
Just being tired and a swollen lymph node for about 2 months. And the only other symptom in addition to fatigue was, as you know, I work out a lot, And as I had my second child, I went back to teaching kickboxing and yoga and doing my normal training. And in my week of kickboxing, I was teaching a class at work. And 20 minutes into the workout, I couldn't breathe. I started like panting. And I'm like, this is so weird. I am so out of shape. I am so out of shape. And so that was another signal that something was off. My body was telling me it's not just your lymph node, it's not just fatigue, it's not just your second child. There's something going on. And so that was when I decided to go to the doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. How old was your your first son at this point?
2 years old, and Landon was 8.5 months. And so, yeah, that was a fun journey as well, trying to figure out like, what are you doing with kids, and how are you don't have time for the doctors for yourself. You take your kids every month for well checks. And when they're babies, you have to make sure they're getting their vaccines and all the fun stuff that you do with babies. I was still nursing. So
see, I can't even imagine. Like, I remember when I had my first child and I had my second one, you're just trying to survive, right?
yes.
You're trying, you lack sleep, your body is all over the place, and you're just trying to survive. So to throw this into the picture to me is really frightful. And I'm just trying to see, as far as how your mentality was, like, how could you reassure, especially like your 2-year-old, like, oh, what's happening to mommy? Like, how could you, well, what did you do? How did you talk to him? Because I'm sure he was little, but the kids are very insightful and they're very smart. So I'm sure he was picking up something's going on in our household.
Yeah. Maura, you're recording this, so I guess maybe the podcast will show I have fairly long hair, or they'll be listening. I have fairly long hair, and I've always had long hair. From time to time, I'll cut it, but most of the time it's fairly long. And both my 2-year-old and my 8.5-month-old, when they would nurse, they would hold my hair. That was like their security blanket. And so my hair has always been their like comfort. And so the number one thing that when I first got diagnosed was, am I going to lose my hair? I was fine with doing chemo. I was fine with finding out that it's cancer. I was struggling with, how am I going to tell these two little boys, one, that I have to stop nursing, which is another emotional, guilty roller coaster you go through, right, but also your 2-year-old that's always attached to mommy. And when you put them to bed at night, that's what they hold instead of their blanket or their thumb. They hold your hair. So yeah, I did a lot of reading. I was very, very lucky and blessed to be, gifted 3 or 4 angel nurses in my life that gave me some advice around just be yourself and be comfortable in your skin, and everything will fall into place. Be transparent. The kids will know. So I did that. I read a couple small books about, how do you tell your kids you have a disease? How do you tell your kids that you might be dying? How do you tell your kids that you're going to try to fix it so their boo-boo goes away? All of those things. And the books, honestly, they did work. I got a couple books that I had Caden read at night around mommy losing her hair, and how hats are so cool, and how different caps are so cool, and how he was going to cut my hair. And so that was part of the journey, and it was almost like an adventure that we all took together. And
if you have, do you still have those books or the name of them? If you send them to me, I can add them to our show notes so that other people can refer to them. That would be really good.
Yeah, I'll take a look. Right. And I'm pretty sure I still have those books, so I will do that. I have gifted a lot of books to some friends that have also been diagnosed, so I'll look and see. But yeah, yes, I will get those too.
Okay, thank you so much. So how did you make sure, as far as, because I know when you have your second child already, it's problematic to make sure that you have time for both of the kids. And so now that you're sick and you're worried that your older child is understanding more, but everyone wants to help you, obviously, how do you keep I guess maintaining the bond with your baby? Because I feel like those beginning times are very important, and that's crucial to kind of making that connection. How did you do that? Because I'm sure you were feeling nauseous, you were sick.
Yeah, I was sick. My chemo process was about 8 months straight of chemo every 2 to 3 weeks. So I was probably well for about 4 to 5 days out of the month where I was not sick and vomiting. Those 4 to 5 days were like the best days of my life. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but that during that time is the first time I lived. I actually spent quality in person, in the moment time with the people that I was with, you being included in those times of when I had the health. And so I cherish those moments because I just really did not know if I was going to survive. I really didn't. So in that time, you are really faced with live, just live. Live now because tomorrow is not guaranteed. The next hour is not guaranteed. And so, yes, it was really hard, especially with Landon. Landon is the younger one. He is now 11. Caden is now 13. Caden was 2. Those days that I felt really good, as much as the oncologist said, you can't go out of town, you can't do this, you can't do that, I picked myself up and him and went to Disneyland for the day. And so that was my days with Caden. And then the other times, because I still continue to work, I had to work for Caden, not for me, not for anything else. I had to go to work for Caden. He was used to seeing me get up in the morning, put my makeup on, and go to work. The first few months of my diagnosis, when I was really ill and I had to have surgeries and I had to have biopsies and I couldn't go to work, he thought I was dying. And so when I was home and not getting up in the normal routine, he thought I was dying. And so the minute I got up,
you wanted to keep that routine.
Yes. He was like, you're better. It's working. And so that was the moment I was like, I have to fake it. Yeah. I have to fake it to make it okay for Caden. Landon was so young. I think the biggest burden was on my mom, my mother-in-law, and my husband. They were Landon's mom for the first year, first year and a half, which kills me because you stop nursing them. So you feel so emotionally wrecked that you didn't give them what you gave your first.
Right.
Thankfully, I had, stored milk and was able to do that. So at least give him something, but you do lose that. You do lose that bond. You lose that bond. And so it's hard. So I think my husband and my mother and my mother-in-law took the brunt and the burden of that.
Speaking of your husband, I know him personally really well. He's amazing. But what kind of advice can you give to other people who are in a similar situation? Because marriage is already difficult as it is. And now you have a child and then you have a new child and then now you're diagnosed. And I know he was, working and he was being Mr. Mom. How did you guys keep your marriage so strong?
Great question. It's a great question because I can't tell you how many times I was.
Because a lot of people, this is the time where they just break apart and either, God forbid, the husband has an affair or that's it, I'm done, and they just give up.
Yep, and that's actually a very good point. When I sat in the chemo room, I can't tell you how many marriages I saw break up during a cancer diagnosis. Because one, as a patient, you're in survival mode. You're just trying to live and get yourself well. So your mindset has to be different. But your spouse is also dealing with things, and how do you help them? It's hard, right? So they have to tolerate a lot of your insecurities and your feelings, and so a lot of marriages do fail. Mine, I got lucky. I got really lucky. He's a better person than I am. He is the better half. He is the better parent.
Lots of patience, I think, right?
Lots of patience.
To be a very patient person.
Yeah, and the other part is I'm lucky. I have a very good support system. I have my mom and my sister and my husband are best friends. And so they already had a plan in place that if something was to happen, this is plan B. And so for him, he was like, okay, at least we have plan B. If something happens, my sister will step in. If something with the kids is needed, she will step in for the mother aspect. But he was like, you are stubborn. You are stronger than anyone I know. I will not tolerate you being a victim. You are not a victim. This is a bump in the road. You can tolerate the chemo. You're physically fine. You're healthy in every other aspect. You're going to fight. So he literally gave me 2 weeks. He goes, you have 2 weeks to cry. You have 2 weeks to have a pity party. And then after that 2
Love
weeks,
that.
you need to fight. And if you don't fight, we have a problem. And that really was what it was. And he was right. That doesn't mean he didn't cry every single night that he put Landon to sleep. Because remember, he's the one who took the burden of raising and being where Landon's screaming in his face because he wants mommy, right? So there's that aspect. But I think also for them, that was his way of contributing, and he did, and that was his value in that disease to help me get better. And I'm lucky. I'm just lucky. I don't know how else to say it.
That's amazing. Amazing. I mean, you have a great support system, but you yourself, I mean, a lot of people have that, but if you don't have the right mentality, that still cannot work. What do you think has helped you the most to not give up and stay strong? I mean, if you were going to give advice to other moms out there listening, experiencing this difficult situation, I mean, what techniques even? Like, I know you've always been in great health. You work out. I mean, what kinds of things have really kind of helped you? Meditation, you know?
Yeah. I do a lot of visualization. I meditate. I do work out pretty actively every single day. During chemo, I will honestly say I did none of that. I had no energy to do that. But coming out of chemo, I did. During the chemo time frame of that major, like 1 year and then 2 years of treatment on every Friday, that was my regimen for 3 full years of having a portacath and getting chemotherapy. I listened to my sister as a health advocate. I trusted her. I did not touch the internet. I recommend that anyone that is a cancer diagnosee or a patient, just don't look at the internet. You are your own individual body. That was the number one advice that my oncologist, Dr. Lil, who has since passed of cancer himself, gave me, is don't look at the internet. You're going to see survival rates of 15, 20, 30%, and you're not that 15, 20%. So don't look at it. He's like, it's based off of statistics that are skewed based off of the patient populations. And I run trials and I understand that. But you have to trust that God has a plan for you and that you're stronger than what you've been diagnosed, and visualizing your health is critical. And so I did that. And like I said, I started meditating and doing Wim Hof breathing treatments because my sister told me to. Honestly, my sister's like, this is what you need to do. And I did it, and I trusted her. And anything and everything that has to do with learning on how to better yourself, I did, and I trusted it. I'm a good student when it comes to stuff like that. And so it's your mindset. I've always been a pretty positive person, and I think it has a lot to do with it. To this day, the oncologist is like, you're my rock star. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I had angels. He's like, no, you would have beat that even if it was like the worst thing in the planet, and you got the worst thing in the planet, and then you still came into your smiling when you're getting chemotherapy.
I totally agree with your doctor.
So I think the mindset is part of it. But your support system and the people that rally behind you and your prayer warriors make a big difference too. You know, your energy source and your universe is part of that.
Of course. That's great. Now I know throughout the years, you still have had some scares. How do you keep going? And do you ask yourself the what if questions late at night, or you don't even allow yourself to go there?
Oh, I wish I can give that advice all day long. I actually go to the oncologist this Friday coming up. This is the first time I kind of like, okay. And now I'm hitting the 10-year mark, right? Since being diagnosed, but it's like a 7-year mark of remission. It's just now starting to be like, oh, it's probably okay. But the gut punch is still there every time you get told, well, we have to do another biopsy. And that happens quite often, every 3 months or so. But it starts to kind of fade as you hit the 5, 6, 7-year mark, which is not really fun and ideal to tell cancer patients, but that doesn't mean that you lose hope. And it does eventually get to a place where you can be more normal.
Right.
I don't think you'll ever be the same. I think you'll be more normal and in your own head to yourself, but you'll never forget. You'll never not fear it. I don't fear it as much though. That is one thing. And Pearl, I think this is what me and you talked about the most is What you fear is what you attract.
It's very
And that
true.
is the darn truth. What you fear is what you attract. And the number one thing and the only thing I actually ever feared before I got diagnosed with cancer was cancer. And so it's just ironic that that's what my diagnosis was. That's ironic that that's what I was handed.
Right.
But I don't fear it as much. And I don't think my kids fear it as much anymore. They have those moments of anxiety, but it's like, if that was the lesson learned in this, then great, I got it. And then what? At least you do what you can do and you move forward in your life.
So now that your children are older, obviously they understand a lot more. They really know what the word cancer means.
Yep.
I mean, do you tell them every time you have to go get a scan or you're waiting for a test result? Do you keep the line of communication completely honest with them? How do you give them reassurance?
With Landon, yes. With Caden, no. Very different.
That's
Caden's the oldest.
interesting. Yes.
Caden's the oldest. Landon is not. He's the 11-year-old, and Caden is the 13-year-old. And so Caden went through it. So the anxiety and the post-traumatic stress is there from, if I cut my hair, are you sick? If you go to the doctors and you have a bandage on your arm, did you find out something? To where Landon is like, just tell me, is everything okay? Or do we need to not tell Caden? Because I can handle it.
Oh my goodness.
Which is worse for me, but he's like the strong, very like, let's not tell Caden because Caden will cry.
Right.
And everything will be fine. But Landon is he is a miniature version of Casey. He's a miniature version of Casey. He looks at everything with the 50-50, like it's 50% cancer, it's 50% not cancer. So let's think it's 50% not cancer. So every score I have, that's how he looks at it. And that's what he tells me. And I'm like, you're so damn right. Like, you're right. Like, why am I sitting here crying when you really don't know? And
isn't that amazing that you can kind of like, you think the kids are, they can't handle it, but sometimes they're the ones that give you the strength, right?
Yeah, of course. And that's 100%. I think my kids being small and 2 and 10 months old, by the time I started chemo, it was my fighting force. That is what kept me going. Because I'll tell you, there was moments where I wanted to give up. There was moments I wanted to give up. And the boys would be like, we're not going to Halloween or Thanksgiving or Christmas without you. You have to come. And I would be sicker than a dog. I would be crying in my room. I'd put a wig on. I'd put a lot of makeup on, and I'd pretend like I felt fine. I wouldn't eat anything. I couldn't eat anything, but I would pretend for the 1 or 2 hours. And it was the best moment of their life because mommy was there.
Yes.
And it gives you a different energy because the saying of fake it till you make it is the absolute truth. It is the absolute truth. Sometimes you just have to fake it until you can get through that bump. And so those little boys have taught me a lot. They've taught me a lot.
Wow, I love those little boys. That's amazing. I'm so glad that they have, you guys have kind of helped each other. It's the magic of being a mom, right? It's amazing.
It is.
Now I know in addition, I've always heard you tell me like you're taking care of other people that you hear they're going through the same thing. You have friends or someone you knew when you did chemo that's going through cancer and you're offering your love and support or sitting with them while they're going through chemo. How do you do that? Because that must be a hard journey to revisit because it's, sometimes with some people, it's like, okay, that was something in the past and I don't want to step. I mean, I feel like right now for me with my dad's passing, it's very hard for me to go to a hospital. Like I see someone in a scrub and the hospital, it just brings back so much anxiety of all those days that I was in the hospital. So how do you do that?
If it's the hospital for me and the process and the nurses, my mom is a nurse, right? And so I run trials, and so I'm in the hospital setting quite often already. I think for me, I was so, like I said before, blessed with angels, true angels in that hospital setting that I want to pay it forward. And so it's like, if I could be one voice for someone that has recently been diagnosed to hear that actually you might be okay, or it's a journey, or what's meant for you is what's going to happen regardless. Just live your life, enjoy it now, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed for me, not for you, not for anybody. We could all get in a car and have a car accident. There's more likelihood of that than there is in the diagnosis of death with cancer and the progression of it. Of course, as we get older, the progression is also different. But every physical body is different. And so in that setting, or if there is someone that's diagnosed, yeah, I want to help. Is it hard? Yes. My mother hates it when I help. She absolutely is the mindset of the superstition. Like, why are you stepping into that? Why do you talk about it? Why are you even opening up that can of worms? And there is some truth to some of it, in the sense of like, yes, you are opening the universe, because the mind doesn't know the difference between truth and false. It's just what your words are.
Right.
But the energy is different. The thought process is different. I don't think I'm going to get it by talking about it. I don't think I'm going to relive it by talking. I actually heal by it. And it slowly gets me to the point of where I've now become a resource. And people, the last few people that I have sat in chemo with or have talked through are more like, thank God I can just at least talk to you about like having stomach issues while having chemo. Like, I can't talk to someone who doesn't know that. I can't talk to someone when, what's happening. There's certain things that you just can't talk to anybody unless you've been through it.
Exactly. So true.
So I'm paying it forward as long as I can to whomever I can. And it, it has its moments. Yeah, I have to pick and choose sometimes. There are moments where I'm like, some things are just hard.
Too hard. Yeah.
Sometimes they're too hard, but most of the time I'm pretty available.
You're amazing. I mean, I honestly don't know how you do it all. You keep yourself healthy, you work full time, you have a stressful job, you're a great mom, and you always, ever since I've known you, you've always had a great attitude, and you just have the biggest smile. You have this zest for life. How can we learn from you? What is your secret? You have a secret. What is your secret? Tell me.
I think, like I said this before, it's like your mentality, your mindset. Just be grateful. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. It's a quote that I have on my social media page. No second is guaranteed for anyone. Every hour will change your life. When I got diagnosed, that's what happened. That 1 minute to the next was so different. And it's pivotal in how you see life and how you perceive life and how you surround yourself with the people that matter and the ones that really show up for you, because not everybody shows up for you in the same way. And that's okay. Just people deal with things differently, but give people and extend people grace in those times as well. And remember, it's one life, and you get to live it and live in the moment. And it's sad that it took this type of an event for me to actually feel like I was living, but yeah, it is. And my life is not perfect. My kids are wonderful in many ways, and they fight all day, every day. And it doesn't mean that just because you had cancer, the kids stop fighting. No, that doesn't happen.
We wish, right?
If anything, they fight more because they think they can get away with certain things.
Right.
It's perspective, it's mindset. I don't know. You can't see it in my office. Maybe you can based on my thing. I have a big sign or a big thing that just says hope.
Hope.
And if you can give people hope, you can give them life. And that's the thing. It's mindset. Like, there is hope. There is hope. Even in death, there is hope, because that moves into the direction of research, and that moves into the direction of someone else learning from that disease. And so that's the mentality. And I think that's the only way that I can think about it. It's hard to put into a word or what I do. It's just a mindset.
Well, mindset is everything. I love it. I totally agree with you. I mean, bottom line is that we know cancer is out there. We can do our best to follow all the guidelines to a healthy life. But you are a prime example that you were one of those extra healthy people, and cancer still came for you as well. What can we do? Do we live in the fear of cancer? No, we just can't do that. We just need to be present in life. We only get one life. And basically, we must live for today and enjoy our life. Nasim is a prime example. She's an empowered woman who chose to fight and not let cancer suck the energy and happiness of life from her. She chose to be a role model for her children and for many around her. Unfortunately, we have no way of knowing if or when we will get cancer. Only thing we can do is live for the love of life and know that anything can change. in a moment. So we have to start each day with a grateful heart and enjoy all the little things that life has to offer. Thank you, Nasim, for being our wonderful guest today. Your spirit and energy, love for life is an inspiration to all of us. If you are experiencing something similar to what Nasim went through, don't hesitate to reach out to her at Nasim_Boggs@edwards.com, and I will put everything in the show notes. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Thank you everyone for tuning in today to Female Fluence. Together we can influence and motivate other mind-like females. Your job is to feel alive, be in control, and always be true to your own self. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can continue feeling inspired. All the links and notes from this episode will be posted on my website, femalefluence.com. Don't forget to also follow me at Mashour, a Female Fluence, on both Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, if you're in need of a woman empowerment life coach to help you identify the barriers that keep you from living the life you seek, please send an email to info@femalefluence.org. Remember, my friends, don't just exist, but live your life to the fullest. I'm your host, Mashour. Until we talk next time.